in Fort Hood, Texas, and then and that was where you did your training?
That's where I went through basic training
And then what?
for a year, and then they put me with a tank company, and after the year was up, they sent me home.
Oh, so basically you were in Texas the entire first year. You didn't
right.
see any action.
No, nothing. There was no action anywhere.
Oh, okay. So that was before the war.
It was before the Korean War.
And then you came back to Cleveland?
Came back to Cleveland, went to Western Reserve.
Case Western Reserve University.
Right. Well, then it was Western Reserve. Case was a separate operation.
And where did you live?
I really don't remember. I think probably with my father.
So your parents were at that point split up or
They
divorced?
were divorced.
And then you went to Case for how many
For a year, and then the Korean War broke out. I went to Western Reserve,
Right.
and the Korean War broke out, and I called my reserve outfit when I was back in the Army again. And then I went to Camp Polk, Louisiana, and we were a training outfit. And they kept coming. They'd need people to go to Korea, and they'd have these meetings, and I figured, screw it, and I volunteered. I was tired of where we were, and I went to Korea
How did you get there?
by boat. Took 14 days to get across.
What was that trip like?
Well, when we got to first couple of days out of San Francisco, it was rough, and then came into an area called Incheon, and the boat had to anchor off of shore. So they threw cargo nets over the side of the tank, and they brought LSTs out, which are landing craft, and you came over to the side of the boat, and they took your duffel bag and threw it over the side, and it landed in the LST.
What's an LST?
Landing craft. It's a small,
A little boat?
Boat, and then you got crawled down a cargo net on the side of the Liberty ship, and got in this thing, and they took you to shore. And then there was a train there. And you got on the train, and the train had no windows. It was lit by a beer can. They turned into a lantern. And I remember throwing my duffel bag up on a bunk, and it went right out the window. So I had to get off and get it and bring it back on the train. And they took us, the train left and took us someplace, and we got out, and then you sit around, and all of a sudden, they come by and they assigned you someplace, and I went to the tank company of the God, I can't remember right now, and I know it. Anyhow, 7th Infantry Division, and I was in support of an infantry company. Each regiment had a tank company, and in support, and that was what we did for 7 or 8 months, and we supported the infantry. We would go out and patrol, and the infantry was on patrol, and we'd support them. We'd protect them the best we could. But at that time, they'd already come back from the Yalu River, so it was just all the action was going above the 38th parallel during the day, and then falling back at night. We did that for quite a while, all through the winter. And then one day they called up and told me I was rotating home. And came back, went to, I can't remember whether I don't know, they sent us to Japan, and then we got on a boat and rotated back to the United States.
So I remember, do you get seasick when you're on the ships like that?
I didn't. On the way over, I got seasick. On the way back, the seas were calm. The fun thing about when we went over, when we passed the international date line, they had a ceremony where it's a big deal where King Neptune and everything else. I still have the card where I crossed over that. So if I ever sometime go on a ship and cross the equator or that, they can't initiate me anymore. They can't get me. I used to I guess when people go on a cruise today and they cross there, they always have a lot of fun with the passengers. And anyhow, I got a card for crossing the international date line. You lose a day one way and you gain a day the other way. And I can't remember which way it went.
So, and then did you go back again to Korea after that?
I was only in Korea once.
So, talk a little bit more about that, Dad. I know that you had a tank and you saw a lot of action, right?
We went on patrol every day. Well, yeah. We didn't go on patrol every day, but at least every other day we would go on patrol above the 38th parallel, shoot and come back.
What would you shoot at?
They'd look for, you'd see their emplacements, their bunkers. You would see where they built themselves in, and you'd shoot at it.
Did you ever have any combat outside the tank, or were you always in the tank?
I never had to have combat outside the tank. The tank was the weapon. We lost the tank on as I told you, on a mine. We brought it back.
And what about the Korean people? I remember seeing pictures of you in the village.
The ones that we had contact with were very nice. We didn't have much contact with them because we were always in our camp, and you don't sort of go wandering out there into their little towns or anything by yourself, because just wouldn't be too smart.
Well, I think I remember you also you had some pictures of you and some of the children that.
Yeah, they were beside the road when we stopped for something. And we get out of our tanks and the kids were there. We go and talk to them. Couldn't talk to them, see them, and get back in the tank. If we had a candy bar or something, probably we'd give it to them.
Do you remember? I remember you telling me that you could about showering. How did that work?
Well, the longest I went without taking my clothes off was 30 days. Never got out of them. They take you to a shower point. They have a tent put up over a river or something, and they start pump the water out of the river and heat it. And when you went there, you got off, take your clothes off. When you got there, you can go and take the shower and come out the other side, and they give you more clothes. The clothes that you dropped off were gone, and they give you fresh clothes on the other end.
Why did it take 30 days that one time?
That's what the situation was where we were. That we couldn't get cleaned up. The only thing you could do is take some snow or something, and put it into a. We all had steel helmets with us, and fill it with water and heat it up, and you could wash your face and your hands, and that was it.
Where did you sleep at night?
In the tank.
Oh, really? There were beds in the tank?
No beds in the tank. You put where I was, I put my head on the driver's seat, my ass on the transmission, and my feet on the other driver's seat. The other guys would be sleeping on the floor of the turret, and one guy obviously is on guard. Of the 5 guys, we would rotate all night long, guarding the tank. Everybody takes turns.
So there were no tents or bunks or anything?
Not where we were. When you pulled back, there were places.
What were they like?
Well, I got pictures of them. We'd dig them out of the side of the hill, and you'd put sandbags up, and you'd build a thing with a roof on it, and you'd sleep inside there.
Was it unusual to have
your sleeping bag? What?
Go ahead.
I can't hear.
Was it unusual to have a camera? I mean, did everybody have a camera?
Everybody, if you had a camera around, yeah. Mm-hmm. You take a picture. I had some pictures.
And what about, that's the dog snoring, for those who are listening. The dog is snoring now.
Oh, okay.
Tell me about food. What was the food like
rations. Most times when we were up around the line, you had K rations. There was a box, and inside there was a meal and some fruit and a cookie or whatever have you, and you could heat water up and make coffee or cocoa. And when you were back where you were set up, they would actually have a mess tent, not a mess hall, and somebody would be trying to cook meals, and then you would use your mess kit.
Your mess kit?
To eat dinner, and then afterwards, when you got done eating, you went over and sat, and they'd have a big pot of boiling water so you could clean it, use it the next time. That went on I was there 8 months, I think.
And now that Trump and everybody has met with the North Koreans and is, do you have any feelings about that since you fought in that war about the South Koreans and the North Koreans and?
Well, my only feeling is that North Korea knows better that they can have all the nuclear bombs that they want. But they know better than to do something with it, because if they cause any kind of a nuclear reaction, their country is going to be obliterated. There won't be anything left. And Japan, South Korea, and China, and even possibly Russia, don't want North Korea exploding any kind of nuclear weapon, because if they do such a thing, they're going to be affected by the fallout of the reaction of the thing. I mean, when a bomb goes off like that, it affects not only their country, that particular spot, it goes all over the place. So anyhow, in my feeling, this guy is not going to disarm himself. He just is not going to do anything more with this business with rockets going all over the place. And my weapon is bigger than your weapon. That was a fight with kids. When we were kids, we said, my father's stronger than your father. I used to win those things with my dad. My father was a police officer, or we had the police department behind us, so I could win those childish arguments. But
What was your parents' reaction to you joining the Army?
my father, when they called me back, my father tried to get a letter. In fact, he got a letter trying to say that I was 4F, and I tore it up. There was no
That you
way
were what?
that I wasn't eligible to go. He was trying to get a letter from somebody that says I wasn't physically capable of going on active duty again. And I just tore it up. There's no way that I would wimp out of what I was supposed to do. Terrible. I mean,
What about your mom? Was she worried about you?
I don't know if she was or she wasn't.
Do you remember getting any letters?
Oh yeah, she would write me, write letters. The funniest story I can tell you about Korea is I was sending my money home, and I told my father to invest it. And he said he was investing it in blue chip stocks. And I was getting the newspaper somehow, and I couldn't find blue chip listed anywhere. For 6 months I had the guys in the platoon going over the list. Can you find anything that says blue chip? I thought it was actually
Right, a stock, a company.
yeah. So one of the first things I asked him when I got back, what the heck was blue chip? Anyhow.
And did he invest? Was he investing it for you?
Yeah, I really don't know what happened with that. And my father, I don't know if I got it all the money that I had sent back. My big paycheck in those days, my paycheck as a sergeant first class in a combat situation was like $169 a month. That was what I was getting paid. Today, these guys, I think, with my rank, probably make $70,000, $80,000 a year. Anyhow.
So tell me about, so do you remember coming back? I mean, so you were 20 years old?
I was 21. I think.
21, so Johnny was like 11. I mean, was he excited
Yeah.
to see you? Do you remember like seeing
No.
him and
when
Peter?
I came back, I still have it. I have a $5 bill that everybody signed when I was 21 years old.
Everybody meaning from the Army?
Platoon, the platoon.
Oh yeah, I think I remember seeing
I
that.
still have it.
And then what about when you came back? Did you feel excited to be back in the States? And
It was an interesting thing coming back, getting adjusted. My dad had remarried, and I went back, and Carol was very solicitous and wanted me to go in the business. And she went out and bought me a car. She was unbelievable. She wanted me to buy an MG, and for some stupid reason I didn't get that. I went and got a used Ford or something. And I think back about that. She had me go out and drive around in a cute little two-seater MG, and why, for whatever reason, I don't know. So I ended up getting just a standard sedan. But I went in the then I went to went to work for her insurance company. They sent me to school in Philadelphia. And then I came back and started to work at the insurance agency.
Were you finished with Western Reserve at that point? Did you graduate?
I didn't go back to college when I came back from Korea.
So you never graduated?
No.
And so your first job was working with
Not
Carol?
my first job. My first job was many years before that. You're talking about...
Well, first job after the war.
Yeah.
Well, what was your first job before that?
Oh, God, Tony,
Oh, you worked at the hardware store, right?
I worked at a radio store down on Prospect. I had all kinds of odd jobs, and I worked at Sears Roebuck.
Oh, yeah, I remember. On Carnegie?
I never was without a job in the summer. From the time I was 13 on up, I earned money. And before that, I earned money walking around with Collier magazine and Saturday Evening Post in the neighborhood, selling them for a nickel a piece or a dime a piece. I never was without trying to raise money. I think from 7 years old, I had a magazine run or something. I remember when I broke a glass window, a pane window. It cost me 60 cents. It was like blood money pulling that out to pay for that. But I always had a job. Listen, I also always made sure you and Tony, Jeffrey, and Lori had jobs and earned money and understood what it cost to make money.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was invaluable for you. I remember signing for your credit cards and telling you never ever to run interest on it, to pay them off. And I can tell you to this day, I don't think I've ever paid a penny of interest on a credit card.
I think that's true with me too.
Yeah. Well, that's very good because there's a lot of people who didn't. Johnny ran himself into bankruptcy and Peter ran himself into it.
Well, let's talk about other things.
I'm just saying to you.
I know, but we're good with that.
Okay.
Let's
It's
talk
reality,
about,
Tony.
I know, Dad. I just said we're good with that.
I'm not trying to pick on anybody. I'm just saying to you.
Where did you live? Where was the first place you lived on your own?
I moved out of the house when I lived on my own. I got married. I was 24 years old.
So you lived with your dad up until when
I
you
lived
married?
with my father up until then, got married, and got the place on 2575 Kemper. That was the first time I had a place of my own. I never lived by myself.
And the first car you got was the one that Carol got you?
Yep.
So when you were, talk about your first job, what were you doing when you got married? Were you working for Carol in the insurance business?
I was working at C.C. Shanklin, which was Carol's business. And then the two men that were there after I came back from the school left me. And I was left with that business by myself at 24. And I was running it and doing, I thought, a pretty good job of it, and she was concerned about it. She brought a guy in by the name of Gene Bondi, and we had an agreement that when we wrote new business, you got a percentage of the commission. And I was doing pretty good, and he came up and asked me to share those commissions with him, and that's when I knew I had to leave, and I made arrangements to go to Frankel Brothers.
How did you find the job at Frankel
I
Brothers?
went and talked to them about it.
How did you know George and Jerry?
Oh, I just knew them from a country club, from Oakwood. And I went over and talked to them about it. And when they made a thing with me that if I produced enough business within a certain period of time, I would get 5% of the agency. And they thought I was going to not steal, but try to take away Shanklin's business, Carol's business. You know, I wouldn't do it. I just started out like cold when I went there. And I decided I had to produce this business, and I finally came up with the idea of what's going on.
No, go ahead.
Consolidating all of Elmer Baben's insurance. He had all these properties and all thousands of insurance policies into one policy. and I did it.
And how did you know Elmer?
Met him through Tony.
And I mean, you were 24 years old or 25 years old at that time?
In that area.
And how did you know Tony?
From Oakwood. We played golf together.
So,
And
how did you remember how you met
Tony absolutely stayed out of it.
How did you meet Tony?
Met him at the club. I don't know. You know how you meet people. I needed a golf game, and I think they had just gotten into Oakwood. I don't know.
And is that when did you take up golf?
When I got there, when I came back from Korea.
In your early 20s.
Yeah.
The first time you ever played was in your early 20s.
That's right. Never held a golf club before that.
Mm-hmm. And then
Edna was a good golfer.
Edna
Hayes.
And that was
Jeannie's grandmother.
And she encouraged you to play the game?
Oh yeah, well she was city champion at one time.
Why don't you tell me a little about Edna?
Oh, Edna was an unbelievable, nice woman. Got a great sense of humor. Very supportive. Terrific lady, and of course she had a daughter, Virginia, who was Carrie's sister. You know that, and she was retarded, and she was at a school called Bancroft in Haddonfield, New Jersey. And Edna asked me to go visit her. And nobody had been to see this Virginia, I'll bet you, for 15 years. In those days, they hid kids like this. And I went up and met Virginia. And then I started going to see her 3 or 4 times a year.
But she was well taken care of. It was
the school was fantastic. And Virginia was, as you know, was deaf. And she was smarter than most people thought she was. She could read upside down. I think that she could have made it, and they just hit her. And I always remember I went one night before I went to see Virginia. Edna was very ill, and by the time I got there, she was dead.
Who was?
Edna.
Oh.
The next morning they told me, and I had to go and tell Virginia
That must have been sad.
that her mother was passed away. And she consoled me. I was in tears because Edna was really a terrific lady. And Virginia was patting me on the back and making me feel better.
Oh, I remember. So the stories I know about Edna Hayes is that, like you said, Dad, that she was the city golf champion. But I also understand that she might have been one of the first women to drive a car in Cleveland.
Could well be.
And she seemed to be. So I have some of her journals. I have a journal of hers where she kind of wrote things out, and she seemed pretty spiritual and very wise.
Well, she was just a nice. My knowing of her is that she was just a very nice person.
And did you know? Did you ever meet her husband, Eugene Hayes?
No, he was dead when I met her.
Okay, and then Carrie. You had a very good relationship with her as well.
Oh, Carrie was a very nice lady. It's funny there was a time when it was you. She came and stayed with me. And actually stayed in the same bed as I did. While Jeannie was in the hospital.
Well, she maybe you know what I meant, when she was having
the baby.
Jeff.
Yeah.
And I was a year old.
Jeff, I can't remember the story, but anyhow. Poor Carrie, she had a tough time.
Yeah, she sure did. But when she was good, she was good.
Yep.
But when she was bad, she was bad.
Well,
yeah, a lot of.
Sad.
Did Edna have any mental health issues like that?
No, none.
Yeah, because usually
Edna was something else.
So how old were you when you met Mom?
When I got out of the Army, 24.
Well, you got married when you were 24.
Well, 23 then.
Oh, you guys
were 22. I forget.
How did you meet her?
She's at Oakwood Club at the pool.
And do you remember like anything about that? You don't remember the eyebrows?
No.
You told me that you weren't like this, Dad. That you raised your eyebrows up and down to get Mom's attention.
I don't remember.
I think you were joking.
I probably did.
And do you remember when you proposed to Mom or anything like that?
I don't know how it came about. I really don't, Tony. I remember when I first met Artie, he checked the material on my sport coat. I told you that story.
Yeah.
And Sadie told me I was never going to inherit any money.
Welcome to the family, right?
Huh? That's what she told me.
Yeah.
Turned out she was right.
Well.
And it was, I don't think that they, anyhow.
Do you remember the first time you ever saw Mom?
No.
Was it love at first sight?
I don't think so.
Okay. And the wedding was at Oakwood?
The wedding was at Stodder's house.
Oh, at Stodder's house. And Demington.
Wherever they lived.
And then, do you remember a honeymoon?
I remember going on the honeymoon.
Where was that?
Nobody helped me at all with any kind of money, and we went on the honeymoon. I had $500.
Where'd you go?
We went to Miami, and we stayed at a place where, who was the entertainer that had the guitar? I'm sure you don't remember. I don't remember. Anyhow, we were there, and then we somehow got a hold of Stodder's car and drove it back to Ohio.
So you drove to Florida?
No, flew to Florida and drove back.
Okay. And what was your family's opinion of Mom when she was a bride?
When what?
When Mom was a bride. Do you remember your wedding, and do you remember Peter and Johnny's?
Peter and Johnny were there. Johnny was, there was a picture around.
Yeah, there is. There's a good picture of the flower petals falling down.
Yeah. It was a very small wedding. I'm sure Artie was thrilled it didn't cost him anything.
And then let's talk a little bit about who married you. Who was the rabbi? Was it Rabbi Silverman?
Silverman.
Okay.
That's the best of my knowledge of it, yes.
Yeah. And I remember you wore a tux.
Right.
Do you remember anything about the ceremony?
Nothing.
Do you remember anything about your honeymoon?
Just going down to Miami. And I don't know. Nothing much about it.
So let's see. Lori is now, what? She's going to be 62.
62.
So Lori came along about what? So 50, 64. So you waited a couple years before you had Lori. Lori was born in 1956. You were born you were married in 54?
Yeah.
And Lori was born in 1956. Where did you, and you lived, after you lived on Kemper, is that when you moved to Store Road?
That's correct.
And you're still working then at Frankel Brothers, obviously.
Yep.
What was that first year of marriage like? Do you remember any of it? Tell me about then. Do you remember when Lori was born?
Very much.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Remember when she was born? I was all excited. I had a little animal. And your mother came out of the operating room, and her first words to me were, "Give me a cigarette."
Did she smoke during pregnancy?
Yep. That was her first words, "Give me a cigarette."
And tell me about my and Aunt Lori. So you weren't there when Mom gave birth. Have you ever seen anybody give birth?
No.
Unlike today, where we're all in there
No.
watching, and so you were in a waiting room, kind of the old school, waiting to hear whether it was a boy or a girl.
That's right.
It's pretty exciting. And then do you remember bringing bringing Lori back to Store Road?
Yeah,
Or were you on Store Road yet, or were you still on Kemper?
No, we were on Kemper.
Okay, I think you were there. Yeah.
Yeah, Kemper. And they bring a nurse in for weeks to help take care of the kids. Not like it is today. First of all, she probably spent 10 days in the hospital before she came home. It was amazing.
And what?
I had the best time. I mean, I liked taking care of all you kids, diapering you, feeding, all that stuff.
But especially your princess.
All three of you I took care of. All three of you.
So when did you?
When you were born,
Mhm.
what's her name was there?
Lillian?
Yeah. She was something else.
Yeah, I talked to Henry the other day.
Lillian was a special lady. A real special lady for you guys. For us, it was like old world slavery type of thing. I mean, you know, she really she wasn't a slave, but I mean, there's a lot of loyalty in it, as you know, over the years.
Mm-hmm.
And she'd borrow stuff when she got married, or there's a party, she would borrow some of our silver or whatever else.
She got married on the same day you and Mom got married.
Yeah, I mean, that was part of the ritual, I think, probably, of followed down through the years of the blacks and the whites.
Do you remember going to her wedding?
No. I remember going to her church, but I really don't remember it specifically. But she was a special lady. Interesting thing is after we separated, your mother didn't want her to come and work for us in Lillian. Said she's going to go where she wants to go.
Yeah, well, it's nice too. And then, as you know, Lillian, after Mom died, continued to come to our house.
Yeah.
And then we would visit her when we went to Cleveland, and then
She just was a special lady. I mean,
she's
Donna just loved her.
We loved Lillian too.
Yeah.
In fact,
I don't know, where is Donna?
It doesn't. She's in the other room, I think.
Donna, were you in with Kitty?
I tell people that I thought I was black until I was like 3 or 4, and I finally looked in the mirror.
The funny thing about you is you learned to walk sideways because you had a round bread
Baby crib?
baby, not kid, but one of those things that you put them in.
A playpen.
Playpen. It was. You walked sideways. You were a handful. You were very, very quick to learn things. You learned to ride a bicycle quickly. You were out. One day we got a phone call from the guy next door. You were climbing up his antenna, and you went right by his bathroom in your diapers. He called up. He says, "Your son is crawling up my antenna."
I remember that antenna.
Yeah.
It had like a ham radio antenna, right?
Yeah. I mean, you.
I don't know if I was in diapers, Dad. That might be.
Well,
a bit of
I
an
don't know. You
exaggeration.
were very, very young. I mean, you were really young. It was something else.
Do you find, and then Jeff? Well, actually, did Mom had a miscarriage, or she had an abortion because she had mumps before. So after Lori, she got pregnant, as I recall, and then she had an abortion because she got the mumps or measles.
No. It was you, Lori, you, and after.
Well, Jeff came 13 months later.
Right, there was a point where she didn't want to be pregnant again. Maybe right after Lori was born, she got pregnant or something, and I can't remember. Dick Bloomfield signed something they allowed her to have a DNC. I can't remember when it was.
Okay, so let's move on to my birth and Jeff's birth. Do you remember anything about us being born and bringing us home? And were we on Store Road at that point?
And then you were on Store Road. I remember you were a very easy baby. You sucked down a bottle of water, of milk for 4.5 seconds. You were really easy. You slept through the night very quickly. I mean, you just came along very nicely. Jeffrey was colicky. He was fussy.
And then
he was a he just was slow learning to do things, that's all. Part of it, he was slow learning to do things. He had trouble, getting a house broken, or whatever you want to call it. We had, one of those things on the sheets where he peed in the building.
Okay, let's talk about something else. So,
Let's talk about what?
Something else.
That's fine with me.
Let's talk about the house on Store Road. Do you remember were you excited when you bought that house?
Sure, I remember going in and making an offer, and they said they wanted to think about it, and I said, you think about it, I'll go downstairs, down the basement. And I did, and they thought about it, and we got the house.
And you bought it, and the Greenbergs wanted it, and they ended up buying up the street, and then
Yeah,
I think when we moved, they bought it, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
They moved with a wagon.
So, let's see. What else do you remember about? Let's talk a little bit more about some other things. At that point, I remember you had an Austin Healey,
Right.
and then you got that really cool 1967 Camaro,
Right.
and then you got really boring and you started buying Buicks.
The interesting story about that Healy is I came close to buying a Mercedes-Benz 300 SL Coupe. I made an insurance deal on contact lenses, and I thought I was going to be making about $85,000 or $90,000 a year. And the thing died. I thought I was going to be able to buy that 300 SL Coupe for $15,000. Can you believe that?
That's funny. Do you remember what year that was?
Probably 55, 56.
Mm-hmm.
It was unbelievable. I figured out a way to insure contact lenses. In those days, they were throwing them away and making claims. And I got to the company that made invisible the lenses, and I asked him what he would charge me to buy lenses. He said 50 cents a piece, and they were selling them for $65 a piece. And so what they were doing is when they cut the lenses for you, they'd cut 4 more and just put them on file. And we figured out a way to write the insurance and just let the fitter charge a $25 deductible and give them the lenses. And he told me we would do something, I don't know, like 100. Anyhow, it was an unbelievable numbers. And I still have a copy of that policy. We developed a policy and everything else. Worked with Stuart Smith in Chicago. And I thought it lasted a month and a half. If that thing had kept going, what happened is people, anyhow, it died. But I thought I was going to get a 300 SL Coupe.
Still ended up with a nice car.
I know, but the difference between that and a Healy was unbelievable. And of course, if you had that car today, it's worth about $300,000.
Yeah, I remember you'd come home from work and you would give us a ride around the block in the Austin Healey.
Yeah.
We'd be waiting outside.
Sure, it's a great car.
Yeah, it was a convertible too, I
Yep,
think.
that's right.
Blue or green.
That's right. I put the top down in the spring and never put it back up. I put a tonneau cover on it. And I get up in the morning and pick up, what's his name, right down the street, Jules Zoller,
Oh yeah.
and
Drive to work.
drive downtown. Anyhow, that's over with. What else?
Well, let's talk about. Let's think about things like. Do you remember when you turned 30? Do
No.
you remember turning 40?
Made a big deal out of 50. Garson gave me, I still have the hat, a cowboy hat.
Yeah.
That's 50.
What about? Did you have any kind of spiritual development at all? Do you feel as a
I remember just got way off the subject. When what's his name started running for president against Lyndon Johnson, the guy from Arizona. I started up a Republicans for Johnson thing,
All right, talk a little bit about that.
and Howard Metzenbaum.
Goldwater.
Yeah. He came out with a statement that something in excess of, I don't know, extremism in the excess of something. And anyhow, I started up a Republicans for Johnson thing. And we had headquarters downtown, and it was a big business, raising money and paying it back. And I think I still have a letter somewhere around here that I got from Lyndon Johnson.
I remember that letter.
Yeah, and when it came, your mother questioned whether it was a real signature, so she wet her fingertip and put it on the ink.
And and I remember, weren't you on TV making a speech?
Yeah, I was on TV when I originally made the statement.
I remember, and you coughed, and I remember you were still smoking then, and I remember you said, I gotta quit.
All I know is Howard got me on television. And I got to be very good friends with Howard Metzenbaum, and he gave me his phone number in Washington and a code name to use to get to talk to him, which was Cherry Hill. I remember that. And, anyhow, that was a big deal.
I remember playing paddle tennis with Howard Metzenbaum at Oakwood.
Not paddle tennis, right?
Yeah, paddle tennis outside.
Yeah, that could be, but also regular tennis. Anyhow.
What about, I remember how excited I was that he was playing paddle tennis with me. What was your most positive achievement during that period of time, your 30s and 40s?
I don't know, it's getting more and more. In the 30s, it could be in the 30s.
No, in your age 30s, not when you're 30 to 40 years old.
Wow.
30 to 50.
Getting myself to be a partner in Frankel Brothers was pretty good, and then getting more and more of the partnership to a point where I got with the majority of the company. That was quite an accomplishment. Paid off Jerry, paid off George, then we paid off Jerry.
And then in terms of an athlete too, you really excelled in sports, and I remember your golf game got better in that one summer.
Yeah, I had a good, played decent golf, and I also played decent squash. Not great, but I used to play a lot of squash.
And tennis.
Never could beat Michael Wild.
Yeah, nobody can.
But anyhow, that's that.
And then, how were you? Let's see here.
One of my great accomplishments was marrying Donna Zucker.
And how did you meet Donna?
Donna worked at Frankel Brothers. I hired her. She came to work, and she's very soft-spoken. I remember that, interviewing her. And the lady that we had an office manager, anyhow, we hired her, and Donna did a great job. And then she went to her wedding. She got married.
And she took care of Lincoln when we went on a vacation.
Yeah, she took care of Lincoln when we went on a trip. And then she got divorced. I had nothing to do, whatever. And when our marriage ended up, for some reason I asked her out, and all of a sudden it started to get kind of serious, and then we had to have a discussion about children, because I didn't want to lead her on, and if she wanted to have kids, because there was obviously I already had a vasectomy. And there was just no way that I could, do that. So we had a nice discussion before when it started to get serious. And it turned out to be a very nice wedding. Talking about you, Donna.
I was there.
And
I was at work too when you guys started dating.
Pardon me?
I was working for you when you two started to date.
And she's really quite a lady. Turned out, I tell people I had two different lives. One life was contentious, and this one has been quite peaceful. And I still maintain in the first one we were both at fault. it just didn't work out. Good part of the problem was the liquor. I didn't know how to deal with it. I just should have known it from the beginning.
All right. Well, I think we covered a lot, and I appreciate. Is there anything that, like any? Why don't you tell us a couple jokes? What are your tell one of your favorite old jokes?
To me, telling jokes, I like to tell stories that seem somehow to relate to what the situation is. You know, they're so that it has something to do with what somebody's talking about. Like they used to tell a story about this person that goes to confession. The Catholic girl goes to confession. I don't care whether it's a girl or boy. And she tells the priest that she committed an erotic act. And the priest says, we have to expel you from the Catholic Church. So she wanders around and he goes to a Presbyterian church, and the minister comes out and says, she said, I've just been excommunicated from the Catholic Church. And he says, what happened? And she said, I committed an erotic act. And he says, we can't accept you into this religion. And this goes on with a Presbyterian church and a Baptist church. And finally she ends up in a synagogue. The rabbi says, why are you here? And she tells him that she was excommunicated from all these churches. And he says, we can accept you into the Jewish religion. And she said, how can you do that? And he says, just be kind and gentle. And she said, how can you accept me into the Jewish religion? He says, what do those Christians know about fancy lovemaking? That's just a silly story.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
You know, that kind of. And if you have a story that relates to what something's going on, there are lots of wonderful stories about selling. You know. You know the story about it. I love the story about the guy that puts an ad in the paper that he wants a rooster to take care of 500 or 100 chickens. And there was a knock on the door, and the rooster's standing there with a Wall Street Journal under his arm. And he says he's come to apply for the job to take care of the chickens. And the farmer says, well, how do I know you can do it? And he says, well, just give me a 2-week trial. So the guy says, okay. So the rooster, and he says, the farmer says to him, what else? And the rooster says, is there anything else I have to do? He says, yeah, crow at 5 o'clock in the morning. The rooster says, fine. So a couple of weeks later, things are going, he's crowing at 5 o'clock in the morning, and the egg production is picking up. So the farmer signs him on and gives him a 401k and all kinds of benefits, life insurance. And all of a sudden, he notices that the rooster is not only trying to take care of the chickens, but also trying to service a cow and a pig, and you know. And he calls him in and he says, do me a favor, just stick with the chickens. The rooster says, I know what I'm doing. So one morning, the farmer wakes up and no cock-a-doodle-doo. And he looks out in the barnyard, and the rooster's lying down there in the dust, and a bunch of buzzards are swimming around the bird, the rooster. And the farmer throws on his clothes, and he runs out to the rooster, and he says, what are you doing? I told you not to do this. And the rooster says, listen, if you want to fuck a buzzard, you got to play their game.
Well, that's probably a good note to end the conversation. Thank you. I love you.
I love you too.
All right. Thanks for doing it.
No problem.
All right.
Donna,
Let me turn it off.
the interview is over.